Have you ever noticed how a small kindness can change the direction of a whole day? Or how a simple thank you can open a door that seemed firmly closed? Welcome to Better Self. This channel helps you grow as a person while improving your English. We talk about habits, mindset, and the everyday choices that make life better. We do it in clear, gentle language to help you practice listening and learning at the same time. Today we explore a powerful human truth, reciprocity, and how truths about giving and receiving can help you build deeper, more trusting relationships. This is not a lecture about rules or manipulation. It is a guide for honest, practical ways to connect with others, to stay balanced, and to make your relationships more fulfilling. We will move through stories, examples, and easy exercises you can try right away. Let us start by understanding what reciprocity really means in everyday life. Chapter 1. The simple truth of reciprocity. Reciprocity is one of those words that sounds academic, but the idea behind it is simple. When someone gives something to you, you naturally want to give something back. This pattern shows up everywhere. In children swapping stickers, neighbors lending sugar, or colleagues offering help on a project. Reciprocity is part of how humans organize social life. It makes cooperation possible because it creates an expectation that kindness will come back in some form. Think of it as the social glue that helps relationships last. A small story can make this idea come alive. Imagine a new person moves into a neighborhood. On the first morning, after moving in, they are struggling with boxes outside their door when a neighbor walks over with 2 coffee cups and says, "Welcome. Do you want to take a break?" That small act of help, accompanied by warmth, does 2 things at once. It provides immediate relief and it signals that the neighborhood is friendly. The person who received the coffee now feels understood and welcome. Later, when the neighbor needs someone to take in a package or water plants, that new resident is more likely to say yes. The first act triggered a chain of mutual support. Reciprocity doesn't need to be equal in size. The neighbor's coffee was small, but it created a preference for helpfulness. Over time, small acts accumulate trust. There is also a quieter side to reciprocity, the internal urge to reciprocate. It is not always about conscious accounting of favors, but about feeling balanced. If someone helps you in a meaningful way, you often feel emotionally moved to respond. That feeling works like an inner compass. When we ignore it, the relationship can feel awkward or tense. Imagine borrowing a friend's book and forgetting to return it or not saying thanks. That small omission can make the friend uneasy, not because they want something in return, but because they expect a natural flow. So reciprocity is both social and emotional. It helps people coordinate, and it keeps our inner sense of fairness calm. Another layer is the timing and form of reciprocity. Sometimes you repay a kindness immediately with a similar action. You help someone carry boxes because they helped you move. Other times, the repayment comes later and in a different way. Someone gives you career advice, and years later, you introduce them to a useful contact. Both ways are reciprocal. The point is that the underlying commitment to repay in some way keeps connections alive. There are cultural and situational differences to notice. In some cultures, direct repayment is very important. In others, people prefer to pass kindness along to someone else rather than repay the giver directly. This pay-it-forward idea is also a form of reciprocity. It keeps goodwill moving through a community. And sometimes reciprocity appears as ritual. Birthday gifts, wedding favors, and polite replies to invitations are social protocols that help keep relationships smooth. If you want to use reciprocity wisely, start by noticing how it feels in your body. When someone helps you, where do you feel it? Gratitude in the chest? A desire to return the favor? Let that feeling guide you. It will help you be genuine rather than transactional. A practical way to begin is to perform small, unexpected acts without anticipating immediate repayment. Offer help, share a compliment, or bring a small treat to a coworker. Mostly, aim for consistency over grand gestures. The smallest gestures often create the deepest sense of connection. Over time, you will notice a pattern. When you give freely and kindly, people respond. Sometimes immediately, sometimes in ways you don't expect. And the quality of your relationships improves. In the next chapter, we will talk about why giving without strings is the foundation that makes reciprocity healthy and lasting. Chapter 2. Give first, but give well. The heart of generosity. There is a special strength in giving first. That means offering help, attention, or kindness without demanding anything in return right away. Many successful relationships begin when one person takes a step outward and extends warmth or support before anything is asked. But giving first is not only about being generous, it is about giving in a way that respects both you and the other person. A story from everyday life illustrates this well. I once heard about a woman named Maria who started a small weekly study group at a local library. She showed up with tea, printed notes, and a calm focus that made everyone feel welcome. She never asked for money, never expected return favors, and kept showing up week after week. Over time, members started bringing snacks, sharing resources, and inviting her to events. When Maria needed support after a family emergency, the group rallied around her. Her initial giving planted a seed of trust that later grew into reciprocal care. The lesson here is that giving first signals trust. It tells people that the world can be kind and that connections can be built on goodwill. Giving first has limits, though. It is easy to confuse generosity with self-sacrifice that drains you. The key is to give in ways that are sustainable and authentic. Think of giving as climbing a ladder where each step must be secure. If you give too much too soon, you might fall and then feel resentful. For example, new managers sometimes try to be everyone's problem solver, working late to fix issues for coworkers, and soon they burn out. The better approach is to give your attention, time, or help in ways that fit your boundaries. Offer your strengths without losing the things that keep you healthy. Another important point is that the form of giving matters. People notice sincerity. Small, thoughtful acts often matter more than grand gestures. A well-timed message that says, "I noticed you were quiet today. Are you okay?" can mean more than an expensive present. Practical giving, sharing knowledge, making introductions, or offering honest feedback is often the most valuable. There is also a strategic element to giving first that is not manipulative. It builds reciprocity because it creates a norm. When one person gives, others feel comfortable giving back. But this must come from a genuine place. Reciprocity that is earned through trust is different from reciprocity that is coerced by guilt. If you give to trigger guilt or obligation, people will sense it, and the relationship may sour. The healthiest giving rests on voluntary desire to support someone, mixed with clarity about your own limits. A useful image is to think of generosity like watering a garden. You water gently and regularly, not by flooding the soil once and forgetting it. Overwatering can drown plants. Underwatering leaves them thirsty. Give steadily, and in ways that help the other person grow. Try this immediately. Give someone a small, specific act of help today. It can be a quick note of encouragement, a piece of useful information, or a 10-minute offer to listen. Notice how it feels in your body to give and observe the other person's reaction. This moment of mindful giving will teach you more than any article. Over time, giving first becomes a habit and a signal to others that you are someone who builds safe, reciprocal relationships. In the next chapter, we will look at how to avoid hidden debts and keep fairness from becoming a burden. Chapter 3. The Invisible Debt, Avoiding Unwanted Obligation. Reciprocity can be warm and natural, but it can also create an invisible ledger in people's minds. Sometimes, a favor creates an unspoken obligation that weighs on the receiver like a small stone in their pocket. This invisible debt can strain relationships if it's unclear, manipulative, or disproportionate. To understand this, imagine two neighbors. Anna mows Peter's lawn once while Peter is sick. Peter is grateful and says, "I'll get you next time." Months pass, and Peter feels embarrassed because he lives far away and cannot repay in the same way. He begins to avoid Anna because he can't see how to equalize the debt. The tiny leaf that started out as kindness turned into a memory of imbalance. The lesson here is that well-meaning acts can become burdensome if the expectation of repayment is unclear or unrealistic. Hidden debts often arise from cultural norms and personal histories. In some families, gifts come with strings attached. People are taught to pay back with interest, whether they can or not. In other contexts, people might accept favors out of politeness, while planning to avoid the giver later because they feel trapped. The important point is to be mindful about the effects of your giving. When you give, do you make the receiver feel empowered or indebted? Generous acts that empower create options. They do not demand repayment. For example, teaching someone a skill is often more empowering than giving a temporary fix. If you help a coworker learn a new software instead of doing the work for them, you increase their capacity and reduce long-term dependency. Clarity helps prevent invisible debt. When you help, say a few words that set the tone. I enjoy doing this, or no need to repay. Just pass it on when you can. This small gesture removes the weight of obligation. Think of how restaurants sometimes say, "This one is on us. Just enjoy." That phrase eases social pressure. Similarly, if you help a friend, you could add, "I don't need anything back. Just let me know next time you want company." The phrasing guides the receiver toward a comfortable response and keeps the kindness from becoming a trap. There are times when explicit reciprocity is needed, though. In professional or transactional relationships, clarity about expectations prevents misunderstandings. If you borrow money or receive a favor with measurable cost, have a gentle conversation about repayment terms. Honesty and mutual respect keep relationships from souring. And when you are the receiver, trust your instincts. If a favor feels loaded with expectation, it is acceptable to say, "I appreciate this. I want to return it. But I need time to think how I can do that in a way that fits me." Setting boundaries does not make you ungrateful. It keeps the relationship healthy. A practical approach to avoid invisible debt is to create habits of paying forward. When someone gives you help, reward the cycle by helping someone else. This shift from direct repayment to spreading kindness reduces pressure on both parties. It is like redirecting a river into many streams rather than forcing it back into a narrow channel. Over time, your life becomes a net of helpfulness rather than a ledger of IAS. The key is to be mindful about the feeling your acts create. Do they open doors or close them? Do they say, "You are welcome," or do they say, "You owe me"? Aim for the former. As you practice, notice how people react when you add a short sentence to remove obligation. Watch how trust deepens when kindness is offered as a gift and not as a loan. In the next chapter, we will explore reciprocity in friendships and how to balance giving and receiving with people who matter most. Chapter 4. Friendship and Fairness, Balancing Give and Take. Friendship is one of the clearest stages where reciprocity plays out. Friends share time, trust, and emotion, and these exchanges can be nourishing or draining depending on balance. In healthy friendships, there is a rhythm of giving and receiving that feels natural. You help each other through small things and support each other during big moments. This pattern builds a sense of safety. But friendships also evolve. People change jobs, move cities, or face different life challenges. These changes shift the balance of what each person can offer. The smart approach is to adopt a flexible mindset rather than keeping score. Consider a story. Two friends, Sam and Jenna, have been close since college. In their 20s, they met for coffee weekly and shared everything. When Jenna had a child, her time became scarce. Sam continued to call, but she could not always join for coffee. At first, Sam felt hurt, thinking Jenna had become distant. Then he realized that their connection could take a new form. Sam started bringing snacks to Jenna's home and chatting while the baby napped. They adapted their way of being there for each other. The friendship survived because both were willing to change the shape of their support. This story shows how flexibility is key in friendships. When life makes the old balance impossible, new ways of giving can preserve the bond. One practical rule for friendships is to value responsiveness over strict equality. If a friend is usually generous, but cannot be as present for a season, notice the broader pattern. People give in different currencies: time, attention, emotional labor, practical help, or financial support. A friend who cannot give time might still send thoughtful messages or make a meaningful gesture. Learn to read the whole picture. Similarly, the people who demand exact equality for every interaction tend to miss the point of friendship. A friendship based on strict exchange reduces intimacy to transactions. Instead, look for reciprocity over time. If someone shows care consistently across months and years, then temporary imbalances are natural and acceptable. Another important skill is communicating expectations gently. When you need more support, speak up clearly and calmly. Say, "I've been feeling alone with this challenge. Could you check in with me once a week?" This simple request helps your friend understand what you need. People often want to help, but do not know how. Clear, compassionate requests turn vague intentions into real actions. For the friend receiving the request, it's important to respond honestly about what you can do, not to promise more than you have. Saying, "I can text you every few days," is better than saying nothing and failing to follow through. Honest limits maintain trust. Also notice the role of gratitude in friendships. Expressing thanks does two things. It acknowledges the other person's effort, and it signals that you value the relationship beyond utility. Gratitude can be small. A message that says, "Your last message really helped me," but it keeps the emotional thread strong. Friends who regularly voice appreciation create a climate of warmth that naturally invites reciprocity. When friendships do become imbalanced in harmful ways, for example, when one person constantly takes emotional energy without giving any care back, it is wise to set boundaries. You can limit your availability while explaining your choice. Healthy friendships accept boundaries as part of caring. They do not accuse. This balance of honesty, gratitude, and flexible expectations is what keeps friendship durable and rewarding. In the next chapter, we will shift to romantic relationships and explore how reciprocity looks when emotions, history, and future plans are intertwined. We will talk about signals, boundaries, and the art of mutual growth. Chapter 5: Romance and Reciprocity: Signals, Boundaries, and Shared Growth. Romantic relationships bring reciprocity into sharper focus because they involve both heart and habit. Love asks for vulnerability, and often for long-term commitment. The give and take here is emotional, practical, and sometimes financial. Good reciprocity in romance is not a list of checks and balances, but a shared project of growth. Partners build a mutual life by offering support, listening, and showing up regularly. But relationships also test our limits. Caring without balance can lead to resentment. The goal is to create a pattern where both people feel seen and supported. Consider the story of two partners, Amina and Raj. In the early years, Amina handled most of the household planning. She liked organizing, and Raj was often wrapped in work deadlines. Over time, Amina began to feel overburdened. She loved Raj, but she resented carrying more than her share. Raj did not intend to take advantage. He simply did not notice the pattern. When they sat down to talk, Raj said he did not understand what Amina meant. She explained specific tasks and how sharing them would help. Raj responded by creating a simple routine. He would handle laundry and pay a bill each month, and Amina would continue organizing family events. The small redistribution eased the burden and increased warmth. This example shows how specific communication and small adjustments create healthier reciprocity. Romantic reciprocity also depends on reading signals and respecting boundaries. Emotional labor, the work of managing feelings, smoothing conflicts, and offering empathy, is often invisible but vital. Partners should acknowledge this labor and share it when possible. When only one person carries the emotional load, they will feel worn down. If you find yourself doing the majority of emotional labor, try naming it. I feel like I'm often the one calming things down. Can we think about ways we both can handle stress when it comes up? This kind of request invites collaboration rather than blame. Another important idea is reciprocity in growth. Partners who grow together support each other's goals and celebrate progress, and this kind of mutual encouragement is a form of reciprocity that pays off in the long run. When one partner helps the other study for a test or prepares a quiet space to work, they invest in the other's future and in the relationship. Inversely, they expect similar support at different times. Long-term reciprocity in romance is also about balance across seasons. There will be times when one person gives more during illness, loss, or career transitions. Trust that the balance will shift back when life allows. The healthier partnerships understand this rhythm and keep their commitments clear. Practical habits help sustain reciprocity in relationships. Simple rituals like checking in about the day, rotating chore lists, and planning regular date nights are not merely tasks, they are signals that you care. Rituals make sure gratitude and attention are not left to chance. They protect the relationship against slow erosion. Similarly, offering apologies and making amends quickly when you hurt each other keeps reciprocity honest. A sincere apology repairs the social ledger and restores emotional balance. If reciprocation becomes a source of conflict, for instance, when one partner expects repayment for every small kindness, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Talk about core values, fairness, kindness, and mutual growth. Re-anchor your relationship in those values, rather than on a tally of favors. When both partners commit to shared values and clear communication, they can create a safe space for reciprocity that feels like care, not accounting. In the next chapter, we will move to the workplace. There, reciprocity mixes with promotion, reputation, and professional kindness. We will explore how to build networks of genuine support without burning out. Chapter 6. Reciprocity at work, networking, favors, and professional respect. Workplaces are ecosystems of exchange. People trade time, expertise, and reputation, and reciprocity plays an essential role in how careers develop. Help at work can come as mentorship, references, collaborative teamwork, or simple acts like proofreading a report. The smartest professionals learn to give in ways that build relationships and demonstrate competence without creating dependencies. One useful principle is to give first, but with clarity about boundaries and roles. A practical example is a junior employee named Luis, who wanted to be noticed for his potential. He volunteered to help a busy senior on a presentation, not to take the credit but to learn. He offered precise help, organizing slides, checking data, and rehearsing the talk. The senior appreciated the practical support and publicly recognized Luis during the meeting. Luis benefited because he gained visibility and skills. The senior benefited because the presentation was stronger. This exchange was not about manipulation. It was a mutually beneficial professional collaboration. The key was specificity. Luis offered help that matched the senior's needs and to which Luis could commit. In work settings, reciprocity can also have formal dimensions. Mentorship programs, sponsorship, and knowledge-sharing platforms are ways organizations institutionalize reciprocal exchanges. But these formal systems work best when individual relationships are healthy. When you offer help at work, make sure it aligns with your capacity and professional priorities. Saying yes to every request can lead to overload and mistakes. Being strategic about what you offer ensures quality and sustainability. There is a social skill here, recognizing the currency of the other person. Some colleagues value time, others value public acknowledgement, and some value concrete help. If you want to build reciprocal relationships, notice what others care about and respond accordingly. If a colleague appreciates recognition, praise them in meetings. If someone values actionable help, offer it. This attentiveness signals that you understand them and that you are building a meaningful connection, not just a transactional one. Networking is another area where reciprocity matters. Many people approach networking as a way to extract favors, but the most effective networkers think in terms of contribution. They ask, How can I be helpful? And they show interest in others' goals. This mindset leads to deeper ties. A practical tactic is to keep a simple list of ways you can help people in your network, sharing an article, making an introduction, or offering time for a quick review. Small, consistent acts build a reputation of generosity that often returns in the form of useful support when you need it. Handling favors at work requires careful ethics. If a favor creates a conflict of interest, be honest and step back. For example, covering for a friend by falsifying data is a destructive use of reciprocity. Healthy reciprocity supports integrity. It does not erode it. And when someone helps you professionally, always follow up with gratitude and a note of what you learned or how their help made a difference. This follow-up is a small but powerful form of reciprocity that reinforces trust. Finally, know how to decline gracefully. If you cannot help, explain briefly and offer an alternative. I can't take this on right now, but I can review your outline next Tuesday. This response keeps the relationship intact and shows that you respect both your limits and the other person. Over time, thoughtful giving and clear boundaries will make you a valued colleague who contributes sustainably. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the timing of reciprocity and why, when you respond, matters as much as what you do. Chapter 7. Timing matters. When to respond, when to wait. Reciprocity is not only about what you give, but also about when and how you give it. Timing influences meaning. A quick response can communicate urgency and care, while a delayed thoughtful action can demonstrate depth and long-term commitment. Different situations call for different timing strategies, and learning to match your timing to the moment is a quiet art that improves your relationships. Consider a simple interaction. A friend texts late at night, upset after a tough meeting. Responding immediately with a short message like, "I'm here if you need to talk," can be more valuable than a long reply hours later. The immediacy signals presence and solidarity. Timing here is about emotional availability. By contrast, when someone tells you about a life decision, like changing careers, a thoughtful message after reflection, or a face-to-face conversation planned for later, may be more appropriate. Taking time to think before responding shows respect for the gravity of the decision. In the workplace, timing affects reputation. Promptly acknowledging emails, following up on commitments, and returning calls signal reliability. However, haste is not always better. Sometimes you need time to gather information or reflect before answering. In those cases, a quick interim reply that explains you'll respond in detail by a certain time keeps expectations clear. This practice reduces anxiety on both sides and shows that you are organized and respectful. Timing also plays a role in reciprocity cycles. Immediate reciprocation can be comforting when someone helps you in a moment of need. A quick thank you or a small return favor closes a loop and maintains balance. But delayed reciprocation, returning a favor later in a way that has greater meaning, can deepen trust. Imagine a colleague mentors you through a major project. Years later, you recommend them for a speaking opportunity. The delayed, substantial repayment reflects long-term gratitude and often matters more than a quick, small return. Cultural context affects timing too. Some cultures expect rapid, direct reciprocation. Others emphasize longer-term, less visible repayment. Being sensitive to these norms prevents awkwardness. If you work with people from different backgrounds, observe how they respond and adapt. When in doubt, ask a simple question. Would you prefer a quick reply now or a detailed response later? This small habit keeps you from making assumptions. Another timing issue is the power of anticipation. If you are generous in ways that anticipate another's needs, you create moments of surprise that feel deeply supportive. A partner who prepares dinner after a long day shows awareness. A colleague who sends resources before you ask demonstrates insight. Anticipatory giving takes thought and attention, and it often creates a strong emotional bond because it communicates that you keep the other person in mind. Finally, timing relates to personal pacing. You do not have to always give instantly or always wait. Balance is the key. There are times to act in the moment and times to wait, reflect, and respond later. Practicing small experiments will help you learn what works for you and for the people you care about. Try noticing the effect of fast versus slow responses this week. Observe how people react and how you feel afterward. This mindful practice will sharpen your timing and deepen your reciprocal relationships. In the next chapter, we will look at cultural differences in reciprocity and how to adapt your approach in diverse environments. Chapter 8, Cultural Differences, Reading the Rules of Exchange. Reciprocity is universal, but the rules that guide it vary widely across cultures. What seems polite and normal in one cultural context might feel odd or even intrusive in another. If you want to build strong connections in a multicultural world, learning to read these different rules is essential. This chapter helps you notice patterns and adapt without losing your own authenticity. One clear difference concerns directness. In some cultures, people express gratitude and repay favors openly and immediately. They say thank you often and believe that explicit acknowledgement is necessary to maintain social harmony. In other cultures, gratitude may be more subdued and repayment more indirect. A person might reciprocate by offering future hospitality or by helping someone in a private way. Being aware of these styles prevents misinterpretation. Imagine you lend a book to someone who does not thank you verbally, but later introduces you to a useful professional contact. The contact is their form of repayment. If you judge the situation by your own cultural expectations, you might miss the generosity in their action. Another cultural difference is the preference for direct repayment versus paying it forward. In some communities, the norm is to return a favor directly to the person who helped you. In others, people are expected to pass the kindness on to someone else. Both systems maintain social cohesion, but they operate on different timelines and forms. When traveling or working with international colleagues, observe the patterns and ask gentle questions when needed. You can say, "In my family, we usually say thank you out loud. How do you usually show appreciation?" This kind of curiosity is respectful and builds rapport. Hierarchy also shapes reciprocity. In some cultures, reciprocating upward or downward in a social hierarchy follows clear rules. A junior person may offer small tokens of respect to a senior person, and the senior person reciprocates by offering guidance or protection. The balance here is symbolic and part of how relationships function. In flatter cultures, reciprocity tends to be more egalitarian and direct. Knowing these patterns helps you avoid unintentional disrespect and shows that you care about the other person's context. Language and gift-giving rituals matter as well. Small gifts are common ways to show appreciation in many cultures, but the type of gift and the manner of giving can differ. Some cultures prefer exchanging gifts privately. Others do it publicly. Some places see certain gifts as too personal or inappropriate. If you are unsure, ask someone who knows the culture, or choose neutral, thoughtful options like food or locally made items. When in doubt, adding a brief note of appreciation helps clarify your intention. Adapting to cultural norms does not mean losing yourself. Instead, it is an act of empathy. You can maintain your values of kindness and honesty while showing respect for different customs. A practical approach is to mirror the other person's communication style at first, slightly matching their formality, their pace, and their expressions of gratitude. Mirroring is not about copying exactly. It is about creating comfort by aligning with the other person's cues. If you live in a multicultural environment longer term, invest time in learning key cultural practices. Even small efforts like learning a greeting phrase or understanding typical social rituals show respect and deepen connections. Over time, you will build relationships that feel natural across cultural lines because you have learned to interpret and honor different forms of reciprocity. In the next chapter, we will address what to do when reciprocity fails or becomes harmful, and how to protect your own well-being. Chapter 9. When reciprocity fails, dealing with imbalance and burnout. Sometimes reciprocity breaks down. You give and the other person does not respond, or they take more than they give. This imbalance can lead to frustration, resentment, and even burnout. Knowing how to handle these situations calmly and with dignity is an essential life skill. The first step is to recognize the pattern and separate intention from outcome. Consider the case of Grace, who spent months supporting a friend through a divorce. She listened, provided meals, and offered emotional support. When she asked for help during a stressful week at work, the friend was busy and did not show up. Grace felt abandoned and angry. She had expected reciprocity, not because she calculated favors, but because she believed their friendship was mutual. Grace decided to communicate her needs honestly. She explained how she felt and gave her friend space to respond. They had a difficult conversation, but eventually renewed their relationship with clearer expectations. This outcome required courage and vulnerability. When reciprocity fails on a smaller scale, for example, when a coworker repeatedly ignores your emails, apply proportional responses. Start with observation rather than accusation. Ask yourself if the pattern is new or long-standing, temporary or chronic. Sometimes people are overwhelmed and cannot respond. A brief check-in like, "I wanted to follow up on my last message. Is this a good time?" can resolve it. If the pattern continues, set limits. You might delegate the task to someone else or reduce your involvement. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is necessary for your well-being. In more serious cases of repeated imbalance, boundaries become essential. If someone takes advantage of your generosity, repeatedly asking for money or emotional labor without reciprocation, you have the right to say no. You can be compassionate while setting limits. A simple phrase can help. "I care about you, but I can't give more right now. I need to protect my own health." This kind of boundary keeps you available for relationships that are mutual and prevents burnout. Sometimes relationships are one-sided because of fundamental differences in values or capacity. People with low emotional bandwidth or different priorities may never be able to meet your expectations. Recognizing this fact frees you to seek relationships that align with your needs. It is okay to invest more where there is mutual exchange and step back when there is not. This reallocation of energy is not a punishment. It is simply wise self-care. Another helpful step is to cultivate multiple relationships of different depths. Do not expect every connection to meet every need. Some people are good for practical advice, others for deep emotional support, and others for fun. Spreading your social needs across several relationships prevents any single person from becoming a pressure point. It also reduces the sting when one connection fails to reciprocate. Finally, practice forgiveness when appropriate. People make mistakes. If someone apologizes and shows willingness to change, consider giving them another chance. But also, watch for patterns. Forgiveness does not mean tolerating repeated disrespect. When you balance compassion with clear boundaries, you protect your well-being and keep the door open to healthy reciprocity. In the next chapter, we will look at practical systems you can build to encourage reciprocal behavior in groups and communities. Chapter 10. Systems for Reciprocity, Rituals, Signals, and Community Habits. Healthy reciprocation is often supported by small systems and rituals that make kindness easy and automatic. When you design simple patterns of exchange in your family, workplace, or social group, you reduce friction and increase trust. These systems are not mechanical. They are gentle scaffolding that helps people show up for each other without constant negotiation. Consider a team that introduces a weekly kudo segment during meetings. Each person names one colleague who helped them that week. The habit of publicly acknowledging help not only rewards the helper, but also signals what behaviors the group values. Over time, the team becomes more collaborative because recognition reinforces the pattern. Similarly, families that rotate weekend chores or have a shared calendar for errands remove small sources of conflict and create equitable systems of giving. Rituals do not have to be formal. Simple habits like sending a short note after someone helps you, a text or an email, closes the loop and increases the chance of future reciprocation. A follow-up message is like returning a borrowed item. It shows respect. Another effective system is the reciprocity jar used by some friend groups. When someone does a favor, others add small tokens to the jar, which later fund a group activity. This playful approach transforms individual debts into shared experiences. Signals are another powerful tool. A direct phrase, such as, "No need to repay, just pay it forward," removes invisible debt and encourages broader generosity. In professional settings, a standard way of offering mentorship, such as a formal program with clear expectations, reduces confusion about what reciprocity looks like. Clear language and predictable routines make reciprocal behavior easier to sustain because people know what to expect. Technology can help build systems too. Shared documents, calendars, and task boards let groups track who is doing what without relying on memory. A simple shared checklist for household tasks or a group chat for volunteer coordination turns informal offers into reliable support. However, technology is not a substitute for human warmth. Always combine systems with genuine gratitude and personal acknowledgement. Another useful system is the support bank approach in friendships and communities. Keep informal records of significant help and use them to plan acts of kindness. When someone has given a lot over a period, plan a thoughtful return. A dinner, a small gift, or an offer of help that matches their needs. This practice prevents resentment and keeps reciprocity meaningful. But remember, the bank metaphor works best when balances are not kept too strictly. It is a guide, not a contract. If you lead a group, at work, in a club, or in your family, model reciprocal behavior. Leaders set norms. When you openly acknowledge help, return favors, and respect boundaries, others follow. Consistency matters. One leader who routinely takes the time to thank helpers and share the rewards will create a culture of generosity that endures. Finally, practice flexible systems that can adapt. Life changes, and systems should not be rigid. Build in check-ins where the group reassesses roles and expectations. This habit keeps relationships responsive and fair. When you combine rituals, clear signals, and adaptive systems, reciprocity becomes a living part of your community rather than a source of friction. In the next chapter, we will explore how to teach reciprocity to the next generation and why it matters for families and schools. Chapter 11: Teaching Reciprocity. Raising people who give and receive well. Teaching reciprocity starts early. Children learn patterns of giving and receiving from parents, teachers, and peers. The habits you model are more powerful than lectures. When caregivers show kindness, set boundaries, and express gratitude, children internalize those behaviors and carry them forward. This chapter explores practical ways to teach reciprocity that create confident, compassionate people. One approach is to make reciprocity visible and concrete. With young children, a simple story about sharing or a game where they take turns passing a toy makes the idea tangible. Praise the behavior specifically. "I loved how you gave your toy to Lena when she looked sad. That was so kind." Specific praise reinforces the link between action and values. For older children, involve them in family responsibilities. Assigning age-appropriate tasks teaches that care for others is a shared duty, not a favor to be counted. Modeling is perhaps the most powerful teacher. When children see adults apologize, ask for help, and express thanks, they learn how to balance humility and self-respect. Show them how to set boundaries by saying no kindly when needed. Explain why some favors cannot be fulfilled, and demonstrate alternative ways to help. These moments teach that reciprocity includes healthy limits, and that saying no can be an act of respect. Storytelling is another effective tool. Use stories of real people who gave and received, and how those choices changed their lives. Stories create emotional understanding and offer moral maps that children can follow. You can also create family rituals that embody reciprocity, such as a weekly time to share gratitude or to plan how to help a neighbor. Rituals turn abstract values into lived habits. In schools, Teachers can encourage reciprocal learning by setting collaborative tasks where students exchange roles. Sometimes one student acts as a tutor, at other times as a listener. When students experience both helping and being helped, they appreciate the mutual value of cooperation. Educators can also introduce the concept of pay-it-forward projects, where students perform small acts of kindness and pass the goodwill along. These projects teach that generosity can ripple through a community. It is also important to teach children how to receive. Many people are uncomfortable accepting help. Teach them simple phrases for graciously accepting and thanking others, and explain that accepting help creates an opportunity to reciprocate later. Receiving is part of the social flow and helps strengthen communal bonds. Children who know how to receive can build stronger, more balanced relationships. Finally, discuss the ethics of reciprocity. Help young people understand the difference between genuine kindness and favors that manipulate. Teach them to look for intention. Was the help offered freely, or was it given to create obligation? Encouraging critical thinking about motives fosters wise generosity. When communities, families, and schools teach reciprocity with clarity and warmth, they raise people who can both give and receive with dignity. In the final chapter, we will gather the practical daily habits that make reciprocity a steady part of your life. Reciprocity becomes powerful when it is woven into daily life through small, steady habits. You do not need grand gestures. Regular, mindful actions create a rhythm of mutual care that transforms relationships over time. In this chapter, we collect practical habits you can start today to cultivate reciprocal relationships that are healthy, meaningful, and sustainable. Begin with attention. Pay quiet attention to the people around you. Notice small things, a change in mood, a tired voice, or a finished project. When you see these moments, offer something small, a supportive message, a quick compliment, or a practical help like making coffee. These tiny acts accumulate into a reputation for being present and reliable. Attention is like currency you can spend often without draining yourself. Second, create a habit of immediate gratitude. After someone helps you, send a short note that mentions what their help meant and how it made a difference. This little ritual closes the loop and reinforces the value of their act. Long-form gratitude, like writing a letter or making a special meal, can be reserved for bigger moments. The habit of immediate acknowledgement keeps the social fabric tight. Third, schedule regular check-ins with the people who matter. Calendar a monthly coffee with a friend, a weekly call with a family member, or a quarterly review with a mentor. These scheduled rituals reduce the chance that busy lives will separate you. They create safe spaces for giving and receiving support. And because they are planned, they do not rely solely on emotional energy. They become part of your structure. Fourth, practice small acts of anticipatory kindness. If you know someone has a busy week, offer to run an errand or send a thoughtful message beforehand. Anticipatory acts feel special because they show you are thinking ahead. They communicate respect and care in ways that are memorable. Fifth, set clear but flexible boundaries. Know what you can offer and be honest about it. When people understand your limits, reciprocity is less likely to turn into resentment. At the same time, be ready to stretch when important moments call for extra support. This balance between steadiness and generosity keeps your relationships resilient. Sixth, diversify your social portfolio. Have friends who provide different kinds of support: practical, intellectual, emotional, and fun. This diversification prevents over-reliance on one person and builds a richer social life. Cultivate a mix of deep bonds and looser connections, and be willing to invest differently across them. Seventh, practice paying it forward. When someone helps you, find a way to support someone else. This habit transforms reciprocity into a communal habit rather than a personal tally. Over time, you will build a network where kindness circulates freely and unpredictably. Finally, remember to self-reciprocate. Caring for others requires that you care for yourself. Rest, nourishment, and honest introspection are not signs of selfishness. They are prerequisites for sustainable generosity. When you are well, you can give more freely and receive more gracefully. If you try one thing today, choose to send a brief, honest message of appreciation to someone who helped you recently. Notice how it feels, and let that small success remind you that reciprocity is a practice you can grow. Over weeks, these small steps become habits, and habits become the kind of life where trust and generosity are natural. Reciprocity is a simple human truth with deep power. When practiced with honesty, clarity, and boundaries, it turns small acts into lasting bonds. We have walked through the idea of giving first in healthy ways, avoiding invisible debts, balancing friendships and romance, navigating the workplace, honoring timing and cultural differences, setting boundaries when reciprocity fails, building systems that encourage mutual care, teaching the next generation, and installing daily habits that make reciprocity real. The most important thing to remember is this: reciprocity is not a ledger to be kept, but a practice of mutual care. It asks you to be generous, to be clear, and to protect your own dignity at the same time. Start small. Notice. Communicate kindly. Build rituals. Over time, the people in your life will reflect back the care you put out into the world. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to Better Self for more videos that help you grow and learn English at the same time. Keep practicing, keep giving wisely, and keep building relationships that bring out the best in you and in others.